Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink, it is time for some Path of Exile discussion. Patch 3.21 is 3.5 weeks away, and Grinding Gear Games today gave us a little bit of information about the scope of the upcoming expansion, and in particular, something that's going to be missing from it. There are going to be no balance manifestos for patch 3.21, and GGG wanted to give us an advance heads up of what to expect in terms of balance changes in 3.21. Now, GGG state here that balance manifestos are great at communicating certain types of content whenever they want to do deep work on a particular game system, and a good example of this would be the 3.16 overhaul of player defenses or the 3.16 overhaul of auras and reservation. These provide us a good opportunity to clearly explain the changes in a self-contained way outside the hubbub of livestream day. They also give us longer to gather feedback about whether these systems changes are in the right direction. However, over the years they've learned that there are certain types of changes balance manifestos are less appropriate for. And a good example here, which isn't stated, is probably the changes to player-inflicted damage over time that also took place in 3.16. Often changes require greater context that the livestream can explain, or benefit from video as a form of communication, and sometimes there's just so much numerical detail that the balance manifesto ends up reading like a set of patch notes, but it's weirdly detached from the rest of the actual patch notes you need to understand the context and plan your builds. So to take an example here, the changes to player inflicted damage over time that took place in patch 3.16. These are communicated in advance via a balance manifesto. The balance manifesto stated that there would be major changes to how elemental equilibrium worked and to how elemental overload worked, and that these would both nerf those keystones for the purposes of damage over time builds, and that players would get some of that power back in the form of increased base damage on all of these gems. So far so good, but there was also another very significant change that took place in 3.16 that couldn't be communicated at this time because GGG were keeping it secret, and that was the addition of passive tree masteries. So all of these things, many of which were quite important to fully understand the context of the changes that were taking place to damage over time builds, these were not available at the same time as the rest of the information. So GGG want to try and avoid a situation like this. 3.21's balance changes are mostly of the latter type. We'll explain them on the live stream and post the full details in the patch notes on announcement day. Don't worry though, there aren't scary systems reworks that we need to solicit feedback on ages in advance. Our balance goals with 3.21 are to provide more options and more fun for as many builds as possible, rather than reworking game systems in potentially disruptive ways. While there are of course some small nerfs, 3.21 is definitely not a nerf fest. We can't wait to unveil the changes in the upcoming live stream and check out what builds you create in 3.21. So one thing that I've been hoping for a while is somewhat of a rework to how essential grace and determination feel on most builds, even in softcore. I'd like to see a situation where they feel like very, very good choices for those that play hardcore, and just viable choices rather than essential for those that play in softcore. But that would take the sort of sweeping balance changes that are probably precluded by this. In terms of overall balance predictions, I would say that the most likely thing we'll see in 3.21 is maybe a slight nerf to determination and a slight nerf to minion poison, but ultimately that's all up in the air. I think there'll probably also be a number of skills that aren't currently played very much that see significant buffs here, one or two of which will probably end up being overbuffed by mistake. But we'll see exactly what happens there. That's going to be revealed over the next few weeks. Anyways, one of the things to take out of this is that patch note day is probably going to be more important than usual for 3.21, and that's because all of these balance changes are going to be condensed into the patch notes day. One thing I started doing last week for patch notes day is to live stream my initial reactions over on Twitch, but then do a very in detail live stream discussion here on YouTube, and that's what I intend to do again this time around. So hopefully you'll be able to join me for that. But in any case, I'm going to leave it there. May your balance manifestos have interesting results.